Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mansur, yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and asking me to speak to your audience. And thank you for the introduction. What I'm trying to do today is give you a general oversight. I often host masterclasses in filmmaking, talking about production, distribution, but I'm trying to mix some of my own experiences, as you've mentioned, and at the same time, if I can share some expertise, light or tips in filmmaking and getting into the industry itself. So as you mentioned, I produced a film called Shongram, which in Bangla or Bengali means struggle. It was about the genocide and struggle for Bangladesh's independence in 1971. I was very fortunate to have Anupam Kher star in the film with Ajay Argento. Ajay is a Italian actress. She's done a lot of Hollywood-based films, and some good talented actors and actresses from Bangladesh as well, which I'll very briefly come into about talent. I think the first and most important thing for myself was that what motivated me to get into film. If you're listening now, what motivates you? What is your motivation? Because I graduated, as you said, I graduated back in 2004. And since the last 16 years, through my film course, in 16 years, there has only been 3 to 4 people who graduated on the same course who've actually produced feature films. So it's extremely difficult. Filmmaking is expensive, not only in terms of money so much nowadays, but at least in terms of time. You have to invest a lot of your time. It ends up eating up a lot of your social time, time away from your family. So you have to be really motivated to know why you want to get involved in filmmaking. And generally there are 2 specific reasons. One is the commercial element. A lot of people get involved in filmmaking because they want to make money through films, through the model, and that's fine. But that's not what actually motivated me. And the second factor for me, which motivated me, is more about telling stories, about adding different stories into the mainstream media. As someone that's lived and brought up in London, I wanted to find out where are different ideas, experiences in the UK. And it's about international film production. How do we have more South Asian voices in the UK? And it was very, very difficult because we have a massive film and TV market in the UK, but unfortunately, it's not as diverse as it should be, and something that we are constantly working on. So key factor is what's motivating you to make films. Are you prepared to invest the time and energy and resources, everything that you have pretty much, to be involved in filmmaking? And that's because, as some of your earlier speakers said as well, is about there are different ways to get involved in the filmmaking. Yes, there is a way that you go through the traditional method of schooling, and there are existing platforms, but it's very hard to get noticed. So how do you get yourself noticed? What do you do? What is your threshold? How do you give yourself 1 year, 2 years, 5 years to say, you know what, I will try for 5 years, and after 5 years, I feel like this is it for me. So it's very important to understand what your own limits and expectations are from the film world. What you must be very, very alert and concerned, I would say, to some degree, is about understanding what the audience actually want, what is relevant now. For example, in Indian cinema, the role of women has changed dramatically. Women playing mainly a mother or the other half, or the girlfriend, the love interest, if you like, was a significant part. That's changed dramatically, where women are in the forefront. I remember seeing in Indian cinema in the early mid-80s, where the lead actress would have strong opinion about what is to be a South Asian or an Indian woman, and rejecting doing, in the actual film, she would not wear a bikini because it's not suitable for an Indian woman. However, now if you see Indian cinema, the audiences have changed. The lead actresses actively wear something that you may refer to as a bikini as well. So it's about what's relevant now. And I want to use some examples about when I was studying film many years ago, A-level film. And if you're familiar with the Western genre of Hollywood, which is a very strong genre, basically cinema is also a way that a nation identifies itself. A nation tells its struggles, a nation tells its expectations, and shares that with the wider world. And America was very, very good at doing that with the Western genre. However, it was very problematic in the Western genre for me growing up in London, was that it was quite a racist genre. So you would see lots and lots of white people who were playing the good characters, and the brown people or the Native Indians or Native Americans, sorry, were playing the bad characters as well. So that kind of raised a lot of questions for myself, and that was what motivated me to say that, hang on, if we take our history, if we take representation from cinema alone, then it's very, very misrepresenting, it's underrepresenting. I'll give you a very relevant experience that affects people in South Asia. If you think about the Second World War in mainstream Western cinema, there are several, if not hundreds probably, film about the Second World War and how the West won the war. But if it wasn't for the Indian contribution, fighting on the Eastern Front with Russia, it's highly likely that Britain would not have won the war, or the Allies would not have won the war. At the same time, if you look on cinema for that historical point of view, there's really no mention of the Indian contribution. So those are the things that motivated me to talk about films. And specifically about Western genre I mentioned, because it's not only about misrepresentation or underrepresentation of different ethnic groups. It was also underrepresentation of women, how women were portrayed in Western cinema. And you see that in many, many different cultures. So it's not so much so, it's just what's relevant in the nation at a specific time. It's also about the actual world view or world opinion as well. Films about slavery were not made about the African or the transatlantic slave trade from Africa. They weren't very popular before. There were some there, but now we're seeing a revival of those films as well. So really it's about being relevant with your subject matter, story subject line as well. And making films now is unbelievably easy because you can shoot something on your mobile phone. I'm not saying it's good enough for theaters, but that's a different model altogether. But as far as telling a story is concerned, you can make films relatively cheap financially, I'm speaking, and have an audience base because you've got lots of international platforms. And coming onto platform is very important to understand where you are marketing your project or where you want to pitch your project. Where do you want your film or production to end up on? This is separate to the message of the film. The message of the film we briefly talked about representation and issues that motivate you. But now you have a final product. Where do you want to have this screen? What is your platform? Do you want it to be purely online? If you have ambitions to have your film screened in theaters, you have to be prepared for the business element. And this is one of the biggest challenges that independent filmmakers make, is not understanding or not getting enough support on the business model of filmmaking. We are so concerned and consumed by making a film and telling a story, we forget to realize that at the end of it, if you want to make a film successful, whether you want to take it into theaters, there is additional money, additional resources required after the film is produced. Have you prepared yourself for that? After your film is produced, where do you wish to engage? Do you have sponsors on board? Have you done some kind of maths in the sense that if you're aiming your film for 10 screens, how much would that cost be? Who will pay for that cost? So I actually went through the whole journey. So I, as a writer, director, producer, I made a film, and then I actually kept my film away from distribution for about 2 to 2.5 years. And I shot a part of my film in Bangladesh, which is where the 1971 or the period piece took place. And the modern part of the film was shot in London. And we flew our cinematographers, key team members out to Bangladesh to shoot the film as well. And obviously when we came back over here. But the models you will find are very similar, whether you shoot in India, whether you shoot in LA or Bangladesh, wherever. It's about keeping costs down. And that was an ongoing struggle for myself because as a director, someone who thinks creatively, you want to do some amazing shots, amazing elements are required. But as a producer, you're always asking yourself, you know, is this financially viable? Can the production afford this to do? And we were very fortunate because we had a really good team. And with any project, whether it's in film, media, business, your team is quite essential. So we were fortunate to have a very good team working together on this actual project. Now, once the film had been produced, we had the music done. And as the previous speaker said, it's not so much about getting the training, etc., but it's also about training yourself. And that's where you have to have lots and lots of real life experiences. And the best way to do that is just try to attach yourself on any other productions or any other projects going, just so you can get hands-on because there's one thing learning something in school and college or university, as I did, but getting real life experience, that's an opportunity, because then you see where you actually fit in. Do you have the skills, the actual requirements for you to produce? So after we made the film, we actually were very successful taking it to different festivals. We were in festivals in India, in the UK, in Singapore, internationally. And that allowed us to travel with the film. Right now, the film has been is working in partnership with a government agency where we're doing roadshows. But I want to speak specifically about the distribution element, which is where a lot of people struggle after they've made the film. So this is on the basis that you've made a film, whether it's a short film, whether it's a feature film. Majority of the same aspect applies, because you're trying to get your film in front of audiences. You make a film, why? Because you want people to see that film that you've made. And for us, after we had a very successful festival run, it was difficult to get distribution. Why? Because although we were constantly told it's a very good film, the story is interesting, cinematography is brilliant, the problem was language, because majority of the film was in the Bengali language. And I chose it specifically to have it in the Bengali language because about 80% of the film is set in 71 during the independence struggle of Bangladesh. And that was very important to me, to retain the language, because part of the Bangladeshi movement was the right to speak your mother tongue. So I couldn't have a film about the right to speak your mother tongue, and then in the actual film, you ignore the mother tongue, although it had English subtitles. So I then set up my own film distribution company. It took me 2 to 2.5 years, I say, to kind of learn the distribution game, understand it properly. The reason being is that there's a lot of financials involved in distributing your film. So this is a product, it's finished. Now you're trying to take it into theaters. We went through the whole process of understanding the market. We actually released, I think it was 25 or 26 theaters in the UK, which is quite big, very big for an independent film. A lot of Indian cinema or Bollywood films don't often get released as to that many theaters. And the cost was around 50,000 British pounds. And we wanted to raise sponsorship, and because doing the maths, we were quite concerned that would we be able to raise 50,000 pounds back. And this is the thing, you have to be realistic with yourself. You have to be realistic with your product. Doesn't matter how good you believe in your product, how much you believe in it, or how good you feel like your own product is. Will people actually pay for a ticket to go and watch your film? So you have to be realistic. And understanding the business models allowed us to approach different partners, groups, and we, quite proudly, I say, we raised the full 50,000 pounds through sponsorship. So before we even released the film, the whole cost of the release was taken care of, which is not a huge amount of money for big films, but ours was not a massive, big budget film. But we were really proud that we had raised the funds to release the film. And that's what we had done. We then took it to cinemas, theaters. We had it playing for 1 whole week across the UK, and we were very proud. We were very happy with it, and we were getting lots of responses. So that's been my journey, more so about the film itself as well. But I think what's changed so much, if you see the demands of film, was things like Netflix as well. The idea, the persona of what a hero or a character should be like, if you're writing for film, that is, or even directing. People have changed what they expect from on screen. People's attitudes and expectations have changed dramatically. So what was acceptable to be in a film, say 10, 15 years ago, now, for example, lots of other people will change the characters as well. So if you see Netflix at the moment, as such as an actor like, I'm just randomly picking someone, Nawazuddin Siddiqui, he himself says that normally he wouldn't consider himself to be a lead actor, because the looks, the way the expectation was for what an actor should be has changed dramatically. I mentioned before about the role of women in cinema. This is something that I think is changing for good, very positively, and independently. Internationally, we are seeing women not only in front of the camera being directed by men, but we're also seeing female filmmakers telling stories from a female point of view, especially in the UK here as well. And that's something I fully support as well, to get more diversity on screen. So really it's a case of finding what attracts you, what motivates you. Because if you get into filmmaking to make money, then I would strongly suggest you spend your time, resources somewhere else. In the UK, only 2% of actors are constantly employed in film. So 98% 98% of the time, they're not making money through film. That's a serious number. 80% of first-time filmmakers in the UK do not return to make the second feature film. So that should tell you something about the dedication and the risk factor involved. Be realistic, do some budgeting. What does it cost for your own survival? What does it cost if you have to pay rent, bills, etc.? Do you have income from other sources, from another job, where if you don't make money from film, it's still covering that? Because the worst thing to be is a creative filmmaker or a creative person, but being broke. So be realistic about your life itself as well. It's okay to take calculative risks, but again, final point really is about motivation. What motivates you to make films? What is your motivation? Is there an amazing story that you want to tell? Do you have any other partners involved? Do other people feel the same level of motivation that you do? So I'd like to end just my part of it, and I'd really feel comfortable taking more questions, whether it's from yourself, Joshua, or from any of your members as well. And I'd be very happy to elaborate on that.
Can you elaborate more on how cost effective or how budgeting plays a very important role for a successful film?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's more a case of working backwards. If you want to understand what's a successful film, are we talking in terms of finance? What's financially successful? If you want to do something that's more socially successful, or in the best case scenario, both of those. And you want to work backwards, find out what of the story that, again, that's motivating you to tell. You feel like there's a demand to tell this story. And film finance is one of the most difficult things, because in India at the moment, and in the UK and Australia, New Zealand, lots of places, fortunately there are good tax credits. So different states offer you different tax credits. So you need to have a very, very good producer on board who understands the local rules and regulations on that as well. But really, when we budget for films, it's more, not so much how much we need, it's more so much what items we require. So for example, if I'm shooting and a phase of my film requires 5 days filming in, let's say, for example, in Northern India, and the rest of it's in the UK, I will then focus on those 5 days and see what my break down the cost. So I need food, accommodation, staff members, any legal fees as well. And quite often, you want to see that, can you get things funded locally? And this is where you have to be very creative as an independent filmmaker. Let's assume we don't have 100% of the finance. Is there a way that I can get the food sponsored? Is there a way that I can get the location sponsored? Can I add some value to my sponsor who feel like, you know what, this is something that would be quite beneficial for my business or my brand? So budgeting is, you can do it lots of different ways. I would strongly suggest that you make sure you have all your finances or all your access in place before you're shooting. I have friends who started to produce films not with all the finances, and sometimes they've been with very, very big stars from different industries. A friend of mine started a film with a very big star from Indian cinema, but he didn't have the full finance in place. He assumed that by shooting a part of the film, it would motivate other financiers and he will get the rest of the funds in place. In my opinion, that's the worst way to go about to produce a film. So make sure you have a very good knowledge or expertise, even if it's from, if you have a friend, colleague or producer that can come on board, ideally with experience, and it does not need to be film experience. Budgeting a film has got nothing to do with creativity for films. This is pure business sense, to understand where the money is coming from, where you're going to spend it, and of course some timeline. So if you have a friend who's good at business, you feel like, they got good business acumen, they understand figures, finance, that can be far better than having a creative person budget for your film. So understanding the finance, have a full list of items, and I'm trying to be more practical and down to earth on this. Have a full list of specific items you require for how many days, and how much that totals to. And as I said earlier, it's not just a case of having the physical money. Sometimes if you don't have the physical cash, quite often you can get things sponsored for. So I hope that answers the question around finance.
Thank you, man. The next avenue is, this COVID-19 has changed a lot of things. And how has it impacted the media industry, and how is the media industry going to adapt to it in the future? Many restrictions have come into place, and maybe the future would be in OTT platforms, but I think it is very preponed. Has the media industry coped up with all the new changes? Your opinion on that?
The short answer to your last question, has the media caught up or adapted to the changes, is no, because COVID-19 was very sudden. I actually have 3 feature films that I've signed for. We were supposed to shoot our next film in April, and on the 20th of March, I was due to fly out for the launch of the film. 4 hours before I flew out, we had to cancel, purely because we realized that there was no certainty of how things would be. It's affected dramatically everywhere, purely because of social distancing. You cannot shoot films, or it's very difficult to shoot films, specifically certain scenes, if you have to maintain social distancing. So that's been something that we have not expected. That's the practicalities of it as well. The theatres have been closed, as you know, so financially it's affected not only the film industry, but all the industries. But speaking specifically about film, it's been pretty much at a halt. So films that were going to be released, they've had to push the dates back. You can't shoot anything. At the moment, I'm seeing a small movement where people are writing and shooting films where they're actually maintaining social distancing, which is quite difficult to do, because you're constantly thinking about the scenes as well, where the director is able to maintain social distancing, if he's giving instructions to crew members or the cast as well. So the practicality is one challenge. The other challenge is, if theatres are closed, where do you sell your films? If it's online, and we're thinking about online as well, it's not easy to sell films online, but it's easy to get your film online. So what do I mean by that? It's easy to put your film on YouTube. It's easy to put your film on Facebook. But does it mean people are going to view your film? No, not necessarily. So you still need some marketing behind it. You still need audience awareness behind it. And I think it will take a long time for filmmakers to be prepared for something like COVID again. One of the immediate factors is you cannot produce new content straight away. So you're having to rely on content that's already been produced. And we have seen a boom in people consuming films and media through OTT or online, if you like. So purely because people have been at home mainly. So it's more beneficial if you're having your content online. But I would say from filmmakers' point of view, or content makers' point of view, you need to think about diversifying your content into different platforms. So if one platform such as theatres is affected, you still have an outlet on OTTs, which again requires you to have a good producer or some kind of good connection and contacts. So once you have some content, you can easily put it online. Because the last thing you want to do is work so hard on producing a content and then working even harder for people to actually see that content.
There are many youngsters here having a lot of talent. Maybe they might not be able to get into the main picture, into the main screen very shortly. Do you think short films could be a gateway to them? Your opinion on that?
Short films, I still enjoy it once in a while doing kind of short format. But you have to be realistic. Short films do not mainly, I'm generalizing here, short films don't earn you money. They earn you huge amounts of experience. So think of short film as a business card. Think of short film where you can exercise your creativity. Think of short films as a platform where you challenge yourself. What are your strengths as a filmmaker? What are your weaknesses? That's where you can take risks on a short film, because at the end of the day, if you're not expecting any financial returns, it doesn't matter what you do with the short film, because you're not expecting to keep any investors happy. So short films do have a fantastic way for you to exercise your creativity. And what is a feature film? A feature film is basically an extended version of a short film. When I shoot something quite long or lengthy, I break it down so it makes it easier for me to manage it. So short films still have like film 10 years. And we see a massive rise in people submitting films internationally. And that tells us that, there are a lot of people who are excited, interested in creativity, telling stories, which is fantastic. But again, you have to be realistic about the output. Where are you? What are the returns for yourself? What are you expecting? if you want to make a short film, you can shoot something on your mobile phone, as I said earlier on. There are lots of free apps. You can edit the film on your phone. You can get free music, royalty-free music. So getting content for your film is not difficult. It's having original ideas. Is this going to make create a new wave? Is this going to raise a question? You know, is it again motivating you to invest in that time as well? So short films have their uses, and I fully support short films, but I would still be very, very realistic and to say what would be the output of the short film. How am I as a filmmaker? At what part or point in my career am I thinking about making short films? And that's a fantastic way to exercise your creativity as well. But one final point on short films is quite often we focus so much on the filmmaking. And I'm telling you from experience, the biggest challenge in filmmaking, of course, there's the financial issues as well, and some legal issues. But the biggest challenge I found was about people management. You don't know how people behave and react on set. When we've had scenes where there's only, say, 6 or 7 people, it's quite easy to manage. And at other times we've had 70 people on set. You know, how do people manage your cast members? What are their expectations? You know, how do you maintain, if you're having long hours as well, how do you maintain their enthusiasm? So there's a lot of people skill required as a director and producer on films. So short films is a fantastic way to exercise your creativity, but don't think or believe that it's going to give you or make you rich through it as well. Use it as a stepping stone.
There are many youngsters who are here who want to enter into the entertainment or the media industry. Your final words of motivation and tips to them to have a successful career.
Right. So there's 2 things of success we're talking about. One, success, when we say, is generally about a specific timeline or a career path. My strong suggestion or recommendation is have a backup plan. You know, don't go into something blindedly just because your friends or family members say, you know, wow, you're a fantastic actor, or you're very good looking, or the usual stuff that parents or our family members like to give us commendations about. Have a parallel source of income. And if you feel like your filmmaking is working or your career in the media is working, fantastic. You can start to step away from the other source of income if you feel that's not working. But it's about being realistic. And I think really you need to find out what motivates you. Think about in the next 5 to 10 years. Have a midterm plan. Where do you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Where are you now? Do you want to be in the same position you are now in 5 to 10 years' time? How is that motivating you? So really having a clear path to say, you know what, in 5 years' time, I want to be in this situation. But all the way through, be smart about it. So you're not having to be running away from your productions, you know, giving time away from your productions purely because you've not planned well enough. So the main thing really is planning for each and every production or media project you get involved in, planning for your life, because you have a life outside of film, media and projects as well. Are you able to commit time to yourself? Can you pay your bills if the film media projects are not working as well? So plan for that. And as I said, have a really strong motivation. Most filmmakers, independent filmmakers, make films because they are strongly motivated to tell a story or raise an awareness about a subject matter. And usually if it's a strong enough desire and a very good idea, other elements fall in. So for example, your finances will fall in, your team members will fall in as well. So really be motivated, but most of all, have a plan, have a backup plan as well, and your main plan.
Mansur, I would like to thank you on behalf of our institution, myself, our entire team, Sundaresan sir, Manoj sir, our entire backend team, all the participants here. So you have taken a time out of speaking from London, and during this pandemic, you have spent your valuable time with us. On behalf of all the participants and our institution, we would like to thank you very much for consenting and being the valedictory chief guest for the final day.
You're very welcome, and thank you again for inviting me to speak.
Thank you.